World history or human history. Starting at the Old Stone Age, world history does not include natural history, non-human and geological history, except as long as the natural world affects human life very much. World history consists of archaeological studies and written evidence from ancient times. The ancient recorded history began with the invention of writing, but the roots of civilization existed before the invention of writing. Prehistoric times began in the Old Stone Age, followed by the New Stone Age and the Agricultural Revolution, between 8000 and 5000 BC, in the Fertile Crescent. The Agricultural Revolution marked a change in human history. Humans started to do farming, namely farming and animal husbandry systematically. 1, 2, 3. Most of the people switched from a nomadic lifestyle to settle as farmers in permanent settlements. Homelessness is also present in some places. This is especially true in remote areas where there are few types of cultivable plants. 4. But the relative stability and productivity gains from agriculture allow human communities to expand into larger units. Which advances in transportation also help when agriculture develops. Cultivation of cereals is more complicated and thus has division of labor to store food during the growing season. Then the division of labor gave rise to the comfortable elite and the development of the city. The more complex human society made the system of writing and accounting necessary. Many cities have developed on the banks of lakes and rivers since 3000 BC. Prominent and developed settlements, such as in Mesopotamia, along the banks of the Nile of Egypt and the Indus Valley, may have developed a similar civilization along the major rivers in China. But the archaeological evidence of widespread city building there is less clear. History of the Old World, especially Europe and the Mediterranean, is generally divided into ancient to AD 476, the Middle Ages from the 5th to 15th centuries, including the Islamic Golden Age, ca 750–1258. And the early European Renaissance, beginning around 1300, early New Age. From the 15th century to the end of the 18th century, including the Enlightenment and the late New Age, from the Industrial Revolution to the present, including contemporary history. Ancient Near East, ancient Greece and ancient Rome are dominant in ancient times. In Western European history, the loss of Rome was often attributed to the end of antiquity and the beginning of the Middle Ages. While Eastern Europe has transitioned from the Roman Empire was the Byzantine Empire, which prospered for a long time. By the middle of the 15th century, Johann Gutenberg's invention of modern printing, which used mobile communication and radically changed. It marks the end of the Middle Ages and leads to scientific revolution. 6. In the 18th century, the accumulation of knowledge and technology, especially in Europe, reached the critical mass that led to the Industrial Revolution in other parts of the world, such as the ancient Near East, ancient China, and ancient India. The historical timeline has unfolded differently, however, until the 18th century due to expanding global trade and colonization. The history of most of the world's civilizations is tightly interwoven together. In the last 200 years, the growth of knowledge, technology, commerce and the destructive potential of war has accelerated. It creates opportunities and dangers that are currently facing human communities living on the planet. Prehistoric times. Human Homo sapiens or modern humans first appeared on Earth between 400,000 and 250,000 years ago during the Old Stone Age, after a long evolution of mankind. Skills invention engine of the man, since the human era before the Homo erectus, a man also known to use light to provide heat and cook. Furthermore, the human era has also developed language and rituals behind death and began to live by hunting and collecting and being a nomadic society. Modern humans or Homo sapiens began to spread from Africa to areas of Europe and Asia, where there was no ice cover so quickly, and expanding settlements to North America and Oceania during the last ice age is entering its peak. When the temperature of the territory between the warming hemisphere and the pole, temperate zone, begins to drop so low that it is uninhabitable. Humans therefore stopped expanding north and south. Instead, it focuses on ice-free regions that covered the entire planet in the last 12,000 years. The agricultural revolution first began around 10,000 BC. Farming was the starting point for the formation of management systems, and creating surplus food from consumption led to trade. Agriculture created an early urban system, providing trade, production and political power for non-agricultural producers. The development of the urban system also led to the development of languages and the subsequent prosperity of civilization, as can be seen from 40,000 BC before the emergence of cities. of Punjab and Central Asia, Bactria, during 7000 BC. There is evidence that humans began to grow barley and raising sheep and goats in that area. During that time, people began to live in villages built of bricks and clay, some of which remains to be seen today. The first source of civilization was the Lower Mesopotamian civilization of the Sumerians in 3500 BC, 1314, followed by the Egyptian civilization in the Nile Valley during 3300 BC and Indus Valley civilization during the same period, 1516. The city system became more complex from the social and economic system. Each civilization was different from the other because the civilizations not yet related, starting to have a writing system and trading. Religious belief in this respect in the sky, the sun, the moon, 17, and comparable phenomena or inanimate things such as God or like men, is creating places for them to worship, leading to the creation of temples and the system of priests in the end. Civilization Garage. The Bronze Age is one era divided into a system of three periods, namely the Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, which describes the early history of civilization in certain parts of the world. We will begin to see the urban system and civilization of the fertile regions in these eras, especially along the river basins such as the Tigris-Euphrates River Basin in Mesopotamia, the Nile River Basin in Egypt, the Indus River Valley in India, and the Huanghe River Valley in China. We began to see the rise of Mesopotamia during the Sumerian society. The Sumerians had a writing system using the cuneiform, which is a wedge-like hieroglyph around 3000 BC. And the characters were gradually developed a simple and abstract, more writing letters cuneiform that must be written in the clay with papyrus. Writing has made it much easier to run a bigger city. And in this era, we also saw the development of the military, such as horse carriages and cavalry, enabling faster movement. These developments led to the creation of an empire, with the first empire controlling a large territory and comprising several cities arose in Egypt with the unification of Lower and Upper Egypt in 3100 BC. 1,000 years later, the Akkadian Empire in Mesopotamia prospered, 18, with the establishment of China's Xia dynasty in 2200 BC. Axial Age. Since the 7th century BC, there has been a great development of religious and philosophical ideas in many places. Civilization sites such as Confucianism in China, Buddhism and Jainism in India, Zoroastrianism in Persia, monotheism and Judaism in ancient Egypt. And during the 5th century BC, Socrates and Plato laid the foundations of ancient Greek philosophy. The Chinese have also influenced the thinking of three major authors to date, including Taoism, 19, Doctrine Law, 20, and Confucianism, 21, which spread to both Korea and Japan. The European side was influenced by ancient Greek philosophies such as Socrates, 22, Plato, 23, and Aristotle, 24, 25, which spread throughout Europe and the Middle East in the 4th century BC from the conquest of Alexander the Great, 26, 27, 28. Regional empires. Parthenon represents the prosperity of ancient Greek civilization. Over the millennium, from 500 BC to AD 500, an unprecedented empire was born. A well-trained army, unified ideology and the systematic rule allowed the emperor to rule over tens of millions of people under his rule. This period of world history is a period when technology advances relatively slowly but steadily. Major developments such as stirrups and plows occur every few centuries. However, in some regions there is a very rapid technological development period, such as the Mediterranean during Helen's many inventions, 29, 30, 31. This development period was followed by a period of technological recession that occurred during the collapse of the Roman Empire and the early Middle Ages that followed. Great imperial power was achieved through the annexation of territories using military force and settlements to protect agricultural centers. 32. The temporary peace brought by the imperial system formed international trade routes. The most prominent routes were the many trade routes in the region. Mediterranean, which was born during the Hellenist period, and the Silk Road. Empires everywhere faced the same problem, managing large military forces and building a centralized governance. The difficulty of governing the entire population led large landowners to become more powerful and challenge the centralized system of power. Attacks from various tribes and barbarians along the borders led to the central government in disarray. Civil war broke out in China's Han Empire in the 220s, while polarization and division of power erupted in Roman Empire. In the Western world, the Greeks built a civilization which was the cornerstone of Western civilization in the present, until several centuries later, during the 3rd century BC, the Romans began to expand their borders through the use of military force and colonization in the era of Emperor Augustus. Late 1st century BC, Rome occupied all of the territory around the Mediterranean during the era of Emperor Trajan. Early 2nd century AD, Rome occupied most of England and Mesopotamia. In the 3rd century BC, most of South Asia was consolidated into Maurya Empire by Chandragupta Maurya, and the most prosperous in the era Ashoka the Great. 3rd century BC, Gupta Empire take control of this territory and enter the Golden Age of ancient India. A rotating dynasty came to dominate South Asia, dominate the whole lot, Escotmirat Ko Hoysala and Vijayanagara amid the rise of science, engineering, fine arts, literature, and philosophy, which is supported by various kings. At the same time the Han dynasty occupied East Asia as the ancient Chinese Empire. The Han dynasty was regarded as the Rome of China, on the other side of the Silk Road. While the Roman military might was almost unbeatable, Han China has developed mapping, shipbuilding and navigation. The Eastern world has built a metal furnace. This makes it possible to produce copper tools that can be fine-tuned. Like other areas in ancient times, Han China developed a system of governance, education, mathematics, astronomy and technology by leaps and bounds. American civilization began around 2000 BC in the Mesoamerica region. 33. Pre-Columbian societies such as the Maya civilization and the Aztec Empire. After the collapse of the culture begins Omega culture. 34. Maya civilization began to expand in the Yucatan region, and the Aztec Empire was adopted by the neighboring culture and forcibly removed various tribes such as the Talek. In South America, the 14th and 15th century saw the expansion of Inca Empire. Inca Empire of Tawantinsuyu made Cusco the capital, and expand accordingly Andes Mountains. It was one of the largest pre-Columbian sites of civilization. 35. 36. The Inca Empire was prosperous and modern. In particular, the Inca road system and masonry were incomparable. Recession, Fall, and Rebirth of an Empire, edit. Most of the empires in Eurasia were located in the coastal plains. Therefore, the nomadic tribes used horses as their main means of transportation, such as the Mongols and Turks. Therefore began to occupy the area starting from the Central Asia area, together with the invention of stirrups and the cultivation of strong horses. This allows the horse to be able to carry the weight of troops and armor, and make the nomadic people a long-term threat to the source of civilization. The slow collapse of the Roman Empire, 37-38, lasted from the 2nd century AD to several centuries, coupled with the rapid expansion of Christianity from the Middle East to the West. The Western Roman Empire was under the leadership of German barbarian in the last 5th century. 39. Political organizations were divided into numerous states, which are related to Roman Catholic Church one way or another. The Roman Empire was partially broken up in the eastern Mediterranean region. Byzantine Empire. 40 centuries later it was established. Holy Roman Empire in 962 AD made Western Europe back together with a temporary, 41, which is an area in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Belgium, Italy and France, some current. In the Chinese Empire, various dynasties took turns ruling the region. 42-43. Eastern Han Dynasty, 44, and the end of the Three Kingdoms period. The northern nomads began to threaten China in the 4th century AD, occupying parts of northern China and forming several smaller kingdoms. The Sui dynasty unified China. Reborn in 581 and under the rule of the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, the Chinese Empire entered the Golden Age for the second time. But the Tang dynasty collapsed, leading to the Five Dynasties and Ten Kingdoms era. The Song dynasty reunified China in 982, but by pressure from the northern nomads. The northern part of China, therefore, fell to the Manchu tribe in 1141 and the Mongol Empire. He occupied the entire country of China in 1279, including most of Eurasia, with the exception of Central Europe, Eastern Europe, most of South Asia, and the island of Japan. Middle Ages. The classical period is often considered to have ended in AD 476 after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. This is the beginning of the post-classical or post-classical era. Post-classic era, and ended in the year 1500, which marked the beginning of the Renaissance. Renaissance, or the Renaissance. In this era, the heyday of European art, culture and science that has existed since ancient Greece declined. Science and the arts have stopped. The Church had religious and political power over Europe. Also known as the Dark Age or the Middle Ages in Europe. It ended after the restoration of ancient Greco-Roman wisdom came up in Florence, Italy.